Today, we're building a nightstand, actually two, from walnut. Our story starts with some very dusty mystery boards of walnut that we started cleaning up by hand before we remembered we invented machines for that, and we took them to the planer to find out what we were dealing with. If you're thinking, that's a lot of boards for two nightstands, you are absolutely right. The client also requested a makeup table, more on that in another video, and they wanted as little sapwood as possible. So we got some extra to make sure we had enough, and good thing we did. Once cleaned up, here's how the boards looked from their best side. Better than we feared, worse than we hoped. Here they are from the bad side. Not that good. After a long back and forth on the layout, where we managed to stay off camera, as you can see here, here, and here, it was time to start preparing the wood. We started by cutting the boards to length. For the narrower boards, we used the miter saw. Me on the cutting end, with Sam holding the other end awkwardly over the dust collector. Very efficient. For the wider boards, we switched to the track saw. As mentioned earlier, the client wanted as little of the sapwood, the white part of the wood, as possible, but our boards had quite a lot of it. We had planned to do waterfall edges, where the grain flows over the edge on all sides, but because of the sapwood, that wasn't an option, so we had to get a little creative. Once the boards were roughly cut to length, we took them over to the table saw at our co-working space to square them up. With the boards nice and square, we grabbed the trusty old biscuit joiner and started making some panels. These panels might look too short for waterfall edges, and they are. We like to call these the Waterfake edges. These nightstands are the same height as the bed, so only the side facing away from the bed will ever be seen. So we decided to do a full waterfall edge on that side. And the other side? That's where we had to get creative. Once the glue in the panels was dry, we took them back to the table saw off camera to cut them to the final dimension. And that's when we uncovered a big issue. When ripping a board with a small knot, we discovered it was in fact a rotted out void. The first step was to dig out all the soft material, just to see how deep the damage went. And spoiler, it was pretty deep. The simple solution would have been to just cut away the bad section and glue on a new strip of wood. As I mentioned earlier, the side facing the bed is not strictly a waterfall edge since it's not one piece with the top, but we had spent a lot of time arranging boards to make sure the grain and pattern matched. Just because that side won't be visible now doesn't mean it never will be, and we wanted to make sure the nightstands would still look great on all sides. Going back to the rotted section, had we replaced it, the grain would no longer match. So we went new school and stabilized it with black epoxy. To keep the epoxy from spilling out of the void, we started by lining the edges with packing tape and building a dam with hot glue. Next, we mixed up the two-part epoxy, added some black pigment, and gave it a good stir. Then it was time to pour it into the void. We went pretty slowly here to avoid trapping air and keep it from suddenly overflowing. To make sure no sneaky air bubbles were hiding inside, Sam gave the panels some taps to help them rise to the surface. A few days later, the epoxy was cured and we could move on with the most nerve-wracking part, cutting 45-degree angles on the top and sides. Any mistake here would mean starting over, since the grain would not match up. No pressure. Fortunately, Sam's experience paid off, and we managed this step without incident. Well, almost. True to form, we cut through a biscuit because apparently that's just how we roll. But this is on the foot facing the floor, so no one will ever see it. With that out of the way, we could move on to sanding. There's not that much to be said about sanding. It's passing sandpaper on wood to make it smooth. So we did that with all the surfaces, taking care to keep the sand level and avoid ruining the edges. We went through the grits, finishing a 180 grit. And we broke all the edges with a sanding block by hand off camera, except for the mitered edges, which we left nice and crisp. When making pieces of furniture like this, we make sure every piece is perfectly level before it leaves our shop. What we can't control though are the client's floors. To account for any unevenness, we decided to add some adjustable feet. It's a small detail that doesn't take much time nor budget, but it elevates the piece just a little bit more. We drilled holes for the metal inserts, installed them, and screwed in the feet. And with that, it was time to start putting everything together. With the pieces laid out, miters facing down, we used packing tape to keep the alignment during the glue up. You can now clearly see the grain pattern on each component, so let us know in the comments which ones you think are the Waterfake edges. We found it hard at times ourselves. Off camera, we flipped the pieces, and then we added glue to the joints. We used construction adhesive for this build, which is plenty strong even without any mechanical fasteners. It also has a decent open time, which gave us the flexibility to make minor adjustments and ensure everything was perfectly square. The extended open time also allowed us to add the bottom shelf and apron before clamping it all up. A few days later, we got to the most satisfying part of any build, the finishing. We used Rubio Monocoat Pure here, as it is a finish that doesn't have any toxins in it, which is great for environmentally conscious clients, and also for us when we apply it. It also allowed us to preserve the tactile feeling of the wood, as some other finishes can feel a bit plasticky. We rubbed the Rubio into the wood, waited for a day or so, sanded lightly and gave it another coat. We then conveniently forgot to film making the drawers, so just imagine footage of the boards being cut. The drawers are also made from walnut, which we resawed to make the sides roughly half the thickness of the structure. We added a groove for the bottom panel, which was made from a custom sheet of walnut plywood from a local supplier. For this build, we used Bloom undermount soft close hardware with push-to-open activation. Apart from sounding fancy, it keeps all the metal parts hidden and adds a modern, elegant touch. We started by installing the drawer components. Then we screwed the sliders into the structure and installed the drawers. All that was left at this point was to add the drawer fronts, so we cut them to length. Off camera, we drilled mounting holes in the drawers, then fastened the fronts with screws from the back. And with that, we were done. Here's how the nightstands turned out. If you like this video and know someone else who might also like it, please consider sharing it. It would really help us out. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.